and a friend of ours for 20 years, talking about film on WHYY in Philadelphia and nationally on PBS, Flicks, and Quick Picks, Patrick Stoner.
Hi, we're going to keep this short. We know you want to see the film, and this is just something that we wanted to do to help you get to know this guy just a little bit. So they asked me to talk, but I'm going to open it up for questions just as soon as I can, so that you can ask him. So be thinking about that. I'll try to repeat the question so people can hear it. Hello, Jeffrey. How are you?
Good, Patrick.
I first saw this guy. You're all too young, but Wild Thing. Oh my gosh! Oh. If you haven't rented that, we also met a couple of other people that became rather well known. But boy, that was a powerful film. But I want you, if you will, to start talking about how Purple Rose of Cairo was sort of a transformative.
Purple Rose of Cairo. I had as an actor, I'd been in New York for about 7 or 8 years. I had 2 or 3 scenes in Ragtime in 1980. Which was a big deal to have been on the same set with James Cagney.
Yeah.
Right after that, I got Terms of Endearment, which was a huge break. But then when Terms was out, Terms came out like on Thanksgiving weekend, and it was right around the time where I think it was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And so we were the only real kind of character-driven, well-written movie. And we were #1 at the box office. So for about 10 days, we were just #1 and nobody could figure out why. And then Woody, an opening came up in Purple Rose of Cairo. The actor who was doing it.
That would be Woody Allen.
Yeah, fell out. And so they auditioned, screen tested about 4 of us. And after Woody wanted me, and then after he convinced the studio not to rewrite it for him, they let me do it. And that movie was a huge, I was 30 when I did that, and halfway through the movie, Woody Allen told me I was good.
Yeah.
And for a young actor to hear that from someone like Woody, a great filmmaker, instantly, I knew I was going to be okay. I was going to make a living in this business.
And you took that home and created something.
I went home to Michigan, and Kathleen and I moved back. We had 1 kid. We were going to have more. We didn't know how to raise our kids in LA. I still don't know how you do it. And so we raised them in Michigan. But while I was there, creatively, I was kind of going to sleep. And so I built a theater company called the Purple Rose Theater Company, and I named it after that film.
You've done a number of historical films, and as you know over the years, that part of change, Gettysburg is not a film that everybody necessarily has seen, but he took an actual event in real life, and there's a speech that only the likes of a Spencer Tracy from the olden days, who could take a speech and just hold screen for quite a while, but that was something that actually meant something to you. I know it was sort of a special moment in your film career as well.
Yeah, the part of playing Chamberlain, he was a great unsung American hero, and like many people, I was certainly aware of the Civil War, but really didn't know anything about it, and through the research for the film and the character, and then shooting it in and around Gettysburg, became a bit of a Civil War buff, and that movie has been used in classrooms and has really opened up young people's eyes to that part of the country's history.
You also played George Washington in a TV miniseries, and it was important to you not to play them as historical characters, but as...
Yeah, I mean, with a guy like Chamberlain and a guy like George Washington, as an actor, you don't want to play the dollar bill. You don't want to play the picture with the hand in the... You can't do that. You got to make him. You got to find out his weaknesses and the warts and all. And so that's with Washington in particular. I did some reading on him, and the guy was aloof, temperamental, moody, soft-spoken, distant.
You said people around him very often couldn't even hear what he was saying.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you don't picture out of George Washington yet.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we approached it.
Now, you actually did a number of other... The range is interesting. I've always...
Get to the toilet.
Yeah, here we go. I don't know if any of you ever saw a film called Dumb and Dumber.
Oh, too highbrow. Oh, film festival. I got it. Yeah.
Yeah, he was. You were great, Jeff. You were
Should have
great.
been nominated.
Talk just for a second about trying to compete with Jim Carrey on screen, which apparently you did quite well. It was one of the most successful films ever.
Well, the first thing is, you don't compete with Jim, you go with him. And one of the things I did, and Jim is such a tornado of comic creativity, he really is. Early on, I made my character the kind of follower. You know, I let, let's see, I was Harry, he was Lloyd. I let Lloyd lead the way, and so that allowed Jim to just do all the things that Jim's gonna do, and I would just kind of, you know, be that on that leash right behind him. And so it was great fun. And I said to the Farrelly brothers, right before we shot the toilet scene, I said, this is either the beginning of my career or the end of it, you know? So.
Yeah. You've also written, directed, and starred in a comedy, and you won an award for it.
Yeah, I did a couple of indies. We shot them in Michigan before tax incentives. And I shot a movie called Escanaba Into Moonlight that I wrote, acted, and directed, and then another one called Super Sucker that was ended up at the Comedy Arts Festival in Aspen, I think, and did well. So.
Well, there are many others, but I'm going to open up in just a second for a question, but let's just talk for a second about Answer Man, because that's what they're about to see. It's an interesting concept. What can you say that won't ruin it for them? But we'll set it up.
Well, to me, it was John Heineman sent the script to me, and you know, after a lot of movies, you're kind of looking for things that challenge you, that the writing is there, and it really is. It's all the writing. John's a really great writer. I'd never heard of him. He'd been struggling, trying to get screenplays made and into movies and all that. And, you know, through the channels, it came to me, and you could read it, and you're going, this is smart, this is funny, and I don't know where it's going, and there's an intelligence behind the comedy that reminded me of Jim Brooks from Terms, and also Taxi and Broadcast News, and that kind of writing. And just, there was a smartness to it. And so for an actor, that's, you know, you don't have to kind of compensate for the writing, which sometimes happens when you're working on a formula studio movie that's been written by a junior executive.
And as you'll soon see, it's a very different kind of role for him. I think it's fair to say that he doesn't start out as charming as you're finding him here. But I want to bring you in with this to some extent. Does anybody have a question that perhaps for Jeff that I could perhaps repeat? Yes.
Escanaba in the Moonlight is a very independent movie. We actually four-walled it.
Would you explain what that means?
Well, we tried to get distribution, and nobody wanted it. And so we made 30 prints of it, and it's about deer hunting in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It was based on this play that I'd written that had been wildly successful, partly because there was a 10-minute fart scene in the middle of the second act, which I only wrote to try to top Mel Brooks in Blazing Saddles. I'd like to think we did. So maybe that chased the distributors away. But we put 30 prints in and around Michigan, and it just, we released it on Super Bowl weekend of that year, and they were standing in line to see this thing. And for a little indie, it did pretty good. It made about $2.3 million, and we ended up having about 50 prints of it, and then it went to DVD and all that. But I got to use a lot of the actors from my Purple Rose Theater Company in it, and that's a favorite. That one meant a lot because we kind of really did it on our own. So.
Yes. Favorite character in a particular movie, or favorite in any movie? Favorite character in any movie.
I don't have a favorite character. I've got moments. I mean, the neurotic actor. There are scenes in movies that come from characters that I enjoyed. The neurotic actor in Purple Rose of Cairo. Any scene I had with Michael Tucker, who was my agent in the movie, and Michael stands about this tall. That I enjoyed that. Chamberlain, the whole little round top sequence. I thought that was well done, and I was glad to be in the middle of that. And Squid and the Whale, you know, that one, because it was so hard to do. It was hard to figure out how to make that guy work. And not to pump up Answer Man, but this, again, it was another challenge, this guy's got issues, and how do I keep you interested in him for the time span of the film? And so roles like that are favorites, partly because they're challenges.
And of course, in Squid and the Whale, you had one of the most unusual situations in the history of acting, in that your relationship with one of the people in it, you'd had a relationship earlier in another film.
Oh, yeah. I did a movie called Fly By Home with Anna Paquin. Anna was 12, 13 at the time, and like 13 going on 10. And then 10 years later, we're doing Squid and the Whale, and she was my daughter in Fly the Way Home. And then Squid, 10 years later, Noah Baumbach, the writer-director, said, well, I cast the student that you have the affair with. And you go, oh, really, who's that? And he goes, well, it's Anna Paquin. So we're shooting the scene where I've got my hands up her shirt, and we're kind of waiting for them to get the camera set, and I'm standing there with a couple handfuls, and I just looked out and I said, oh, look, geese, you know. Fortunately, she laughed.
I knew you'd want me to bring that up. Yes, ask away. It's hard for me to see in the lights.
Jeff, I wanted to ask you if the role that you played about a man who was writing a book about the presence of God, I happen to be writing a book with the title of that, Face of God in Me, for 9 years. How did that part of the book affect you as an actor?
This is the premise of Answer Man, what you're about to see.
It didn't. I think the movie addresses that. Is that this guy had a lot of answers, and in a way, he kind of fictionalized this relationship with a higher power, and then had the answers as if he'd had a conversation. But it's so dysfunctional in his own life. Arlen Faber stands in front of the mirror, and he's a mess. But he can come up with answers for everybody else, and so I focused more on the kind of dysfunctional aspects of him rather than something he'd written however many years ago. So in a way, it didn't enter into it. Yep.
If you don't mind, I'll come to you in a second. I just want to follow up on this. All of the cast of Good Night, Good Luck were nominated for an ensemble award, and that really was an ensemble kind of cast and situation. Talk about the pleasure of working in that kind of a situation as opposed to something that's not as ensemble.
Well, the thing about working on whether it's a Clooney movie or Clint, they're very similar in that they hire good people to do what they do. And it was a great set in that the respect that George gave everybody to kind of come up with, what do you think it is? What do you think the scene is? Go, do that. There's no discussion about it. You just do it, and everybody kind of collides in front of the camera, and George shoots it.
Does Clooney like to do just first takes like Clint does?
It was pretty quick. I mean, he used a lot of first takes, I know that. George, much like Clint, created a lot of things that would happen for the first time in front of the camera that he would sometimes prefer over what was scripted.
Please. Yes, ma'am.
Having written, acted, and directed 2 films, it's such a monster job to direct. Forget writing. I've been doing the acting in front of the camera for 30 years, so it's like a second home. I know what it is. I'm not surprised. And I'm done. When we're done shooting, I'm done. Goodbye, I can't wait to see it. Let me know when the premiere is. But the director stays with it for months, sometimes over a year on it, and the post-production. And personally, I'm just not that interested in that end of it. I got bored, you know. I mean, I did it. I'm glad I did it. I learned a lot. I have even more respect for directors, editors, you know, people who score films, that sort of things. Even some producers. But it's not something I want to do again. So I'm very happy to just be the actor. And like with John Heineman, you know, John is a first-time director, but I would just give it to him. I would just give him this, give him that, give him that. And let him decide. Let him go into the editing room and figure it out, you know. My job is to give him a few variations, a few options, so that he has some choices going in. Because that's where you really put your movie together, as I learned, you know.
Before I go on to just a couple of last questions, I know that a lot of people here might go up to Broadway and catch your show. So talk about, it's been enormously well reviewed, and 90% houses so far. Just tell them a little bit about it.
We're doing a Broadway play. We opened Sunday, a week ago, and thankfully got great reviews, which is a wonderful thing to be able to say in the New York theater scene. And we're a hit, and it's this wonderfully hilarious kind of Virginia Woolf, only funny as hell, comedy about two sets of parents who each have two 11-year-old boys who got in a fight on the playground. And so the two sets of parents are there to talk about how the boys, what happened and how this shouldn't happen again. And for those of you who are parents and have kids, that can't possibly go well. Because as soon as you start to parent the other person's kid, then it becomes back and forth. And then the next thing we know, people are tearing off coats and coming to blows, which is great fun for a Broadway audience. And so we're having a great time. James Gandolfini's in it, first thing he's done since Sopranos. And Marcia Gay Harden and Hope Davis.
Title. Tell them the title. Remind him of the title. Jeff, remind him of the title.
Oh, God of Carnage, yeah.
Yes. I'll get you and come down here, okay? There was somebody with a hand. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you were 12 years old, starting to the movies, what actor did you want to be?
When you were 12 years old, what actor did you want to be?
Not when I was 12. Well, no, I'll tell you. I love Don Knotts as Barney Fife. And I stand by that. Because if you look at Don and Andy sitting on the porch talking about getting ice cream and we should go get ice cream, and they sit there for maybe a minute and a half and they never move. There's some real good writing, and there's some real good, simple, believable acting going on. Even though Don would Barney it up and do the thing a little bit, you could see him. Not that I knew what I was watching, but I was kind of interested in that. Another guy that really influenced me, and you can see it in Something Wild, is Dick Van Dyke. I mean, these are the shows I grew up on. And to see the comedy and the commitment to comedy that Dick Van Dyke had, from the flipping over the stool to everything he would do, and the moves and the thing, which led me to Jack Lemmon, which led me to Peter Sellers, Strange Love, and I'm going, whoa, what is that? And then when I was in college, to see guys like Alan Arkin, and then in particular Al Pacino in Dog Day Afternoon. When I saw that, I'm going, I don't know what it is he's doing, but I'm going to go to New York and figure out how to do that, because that's where Al Pacino went, and that's what I did.
We want to get this going in about 5 minutes, so yes, sir.
What film scene did you like that got cut from the movie, and why was it cut?
What scene from this film, Answer Man? Any movie that got cut that you wish had?
Nothing was cut.
While he's thinking, let me say what he just told me earlier at dinner. He doesn't like to go back and revisit movies. He likes to go back and revisit moments in movies. So he doesn't like to watch them all the way through again once they're done. But he does like to go back and revisit moments after enough time has gone by that he's forgotten what was going on around it, like, who was doing this off on the side, or what arguments were going on, and he can kind of lose himself in it. Did I cover enough time for you?
Yeah, a little bit. I have no idea, because there was probably a reason why, whether you did it or not, and that comes from having written, acted, and directed the two films. Maybe before that, I would have said, oh, I don't know why they didn't use that scene. Well, because but the pace went like that when we left that scene in for whatever reason. I mean, in Answer Man, there's a scene in the church where I'm in the church and I'm singing, I think it was My Way or something, on the altar of a church. And, John thought it was great, I thought felt great, it was completely outrageous, and it's not in the movie. But I'm like going, well, we don't need it, That's where the writer comes in and goes, no, we don't need that, that's too much. It makes the next scene less. Take that out, and that scene now is even stronger. So the answer is no, I don't know of any scene that I would wish were back in. Director's cuts are, don't buy those. There's probably a reason.
All right, let's see. Who might like to take the last question? Forgive me if I have trouble seeing you. Okay.
Do you like to do period films like The House on Carroll Street, Gettysburg, those types of things, or more contemporary movies?
Period films?
They seem to, no, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. It's nice to wear the hats, The suits are cut differently. It's mostly about the clothing, and oh, isn't that a cool car? But it really isn't, it's kind of fun to do the research, to kind of realize what they had in the 30s or 40s that, that we have now that they didn't, and kind of see if that would affect you. It's all just part of the research, but it really doesn't matter.
By the way, Gettysburg, which is one of my favorite films, world's worst beards. Absolutely atrocious beards.
I had a mustache.
Yeah, you looked all right, but my gosh, I don't know who they got for the beards, but otherwise, wonderful film, except for Ted Turner, who put himself into it and had to be seen there briefly. That was fairly short. Let's just do one. I'm looking for Tom Caldwell to call me off here, but since I'll just take one more if there's somebody who would like to. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I don't know if this has been mentioned before, but do you feel more comfortable with comedic roles or with dramatic roles?
Comedic roles or dramatic roles, comedy is harder to do. You have to hit a smaller target. You can get away with more in drama. You can literally look up into the lights and think about where you're going to eat tonight, and if they put the right music under you, you're a fucking genius. But if you got to look up into the lights and be funny, that's a little more difficult. And then to be funny without getting caught being funny is even harder. So I love the challenge of comedy. The Answer Man is full of these challenges. I got some great lines that John wrote, and the trick is to try to say them as if Arlen is actually thinking them. That's a little different than, doing jokes. So I like doing the comedy. I like being known as a guy who can do comedy, because my theory is there are a lot of people in comedy who can do drama, but there aren't a lot of people who can only do drama who fail miserably at comedy. But I like being one of the guys that can do both. It's fun to go back and forth.
So let's watch him do it. Ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Downs.
Thank you very much.